Thank you very much, sir, and we'd like to welcome you all to the working session of the Garrard County Board of Education. And this is going to be a very special night, as here in just a few minutes, we're going to recognize those in our district that are retiring. We just enjoyed a time of fellowship and beforehand shared some cake and punch and a lot of good laughs. And I wanted to inform those of you that may be joining us on social media. Also, before we get started, I'd like to say, in light of the CDC guidelines that were handed down last week and the governor's guidelines following the CDC recommendations, we're going to follow that as we meet. And if you are fully vaccinated and you choose not to wear a mask, please feel free to do that. If you're not fully vaccinated, we ask that you wear a mask. Okay, is that fair enough? And we'll leave it like that. All right, please note that all board members are present and the superintendent. So I'll call this meeting to order. And as we begin, would you join me for a moment of silence, please? Thank you very much. If you would stand, please, and join me as we say the pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. You may be seated. Next, I'd like to ask if I could have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda. Yes, sir.
Before that, could I bring to people's attention that may not know, we had a past board member. His husband passed away, and he was a past board member himself. And if they would think about the family.
Oh, thank you, sir. I
very much appreciate it.
Yeah, if you would remember Susan Ledford, she was a teacher in the Garrett County school system for many years. She retired. I served with her at least 8 years on the school board, and her husband, Bill, passed away. What day was that?
It was on Friday morning about, let's see, it's like Thursday night, 11:45. I found out about it. She texted me about 7 o'clock Saturday
Okay.
or Friday.
So remember, family of Bill Ledford, if you would. Thank you very much for bringing that to our attention. All right, do I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
I make a motion we adopt the agenda for tonight.
Mr. McQuarrie made the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Hart made a second. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, let me know by lifted hand. All board members were in favor. The agenda is adopted. Now, we get to recognize our retirees.
Want me to do that?
Yes.
Okay. So it's a bittersweet time when you have something like this occur. It's an opportunity to say thank you to a whole bunch of people. It's also an opportunity to recognize that we've got a lot of shoes to fill. We did ask all of those retirees if they would on opening day to take a selfie of themselves and what they're doing, since they're not doing it at school, to send to us, and we'll post that picture so that everybody knows what you got to look forward to when you get to step into their role and do that. We are honored to have all of our retirees take some time out of their schedule to come tonight and to allow us to recognize them. Their principals are here. We'll give their principals an opportunity to say something about them. But if we could start, we'll start with Camp Dick Robinson, where we're going to lose 3 individuals. So Mr. Charles Alcorn, Mrs. Diana Bisher, Mr. Jason Bisher, if you all would come up to the front so we can honor you. Okay. So Ms. Lawson is here. Ms. Lawson, if you want to share some of your insight about this crew, we'd be glad to hear it.
Well, we are going to miss this group terribly. They have just been such a blessing to our school family, and they're the heart of CDR. So we are going to keep pushing on without them. Ms. Lanigan has been teaching with the Bishers, she said today, for 18 years. So that is a team that, that's going to be hard on that team, but we're going to keep on moving, and we're just so happy for them and Mr. Alcorn as they look forward to the future. I always like to ask kids what they have to say because it always is so special, because that's who it's about and that's who they've impacted. So Ms. Fisher, a couple of her students said she is always just so happy and kind. She has a special birthday chair where she recognizes students on their birthdays, and they remember that.
Oh.
She played Christmas music, and they thought that was really special. She always leads our school play. When I'm nervous, Ms. Fisher always helps me through it. I remember when they grew watermelons and brought them to school for us to eat. Those were the best watermelons I've ever eaten. And Mr. Fisher, you all may know him, he's famous for his dance moves. He's a great encourager. He helps me when I feel bad. Mr. B's respectful and taught me a lot. Mr. B teaches me in a way that I can understand. Mr. B is always so much fun, and he loves sharing jokes with us. On April Fool's Day, he always made brownies to share, which were brown letter E's. Mr. B is the best joke teller. My favorite joke he told was, what does a pink panther say every time he steps on an ant? Dead ant. Dead ant. And Mr. Alcorn, he always asks me how I'm doing. He always has such a great attitude. Mr. Alcorn always helps us clean up our messes. He always waves goodbye to us. So those were just some comments that the kids say. And again, thank you all for your service. We love you.
Thank you.
Brady, jump in there.
Oh, you may get in there?
Yes, sir.
Make it easier.
Hold on 1 second. See everybody. 1, 2. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Our next retiree is from Paint Lick Elementary, Tammy Fain. Ms. Fain, if you would come up. Ms. Irwin, we'll turn the floor over to you.
So Miss Payne is, with her departure, it is like the end of an era in Paint Lick. And I'm not just saying that, she is the final, and correct me if I'm wrong, the final staff member who worked at the old school.
Oh, really?
Oh.
Wow.
So she has had some kind of connection to Paint Lick since she was, what, 5 years old?
It's first grade.
Since first
Oh.
grade. So she has assured me that she is not going to be leaving us permanently. She'll be back. But Miss Fain is very, very special, not just because she's a legend, but she is a legend. So Miss Davis and I were talking, we think, were you the first one in the whole district to get above 100 on the old Curious test in reading? Yeah, so she is a legend for lots of reasons. Her teammates affectionately call her the warden. You may not look, no, looking at her, she's teeny tiny but very mighty. I will miss her so much, not just because she's an amazing teacher. You know, I could just go in her classroom anytime, and it could be like, 2:45 before Christmas, and she's in there teaching her heart out. I always knew that she would be doing exactly what she's supposed to. Loves the kids. I'm gonna miss her cute little outfit she wears all the time. She's so adorable. Every time I see her, oh my gosh, she looks so cute. But I will miss you, Tammy. You are just,
Oh, I'm gonna miss it.
and I'm
Really.
hoping you really will come back. So, Miss Fain, tell what you're gonna be doing the first day of school.
I'm over
I
it.
told my kids today that I was retiring, and I told them I said I can mow my yard anytime I want.
That's what she loves to do. So that's a big stress reliever for her. So I'm gonna miss you, Tammy. Thank you for everything you've done and for
Thank you.
your hard work.
You've managed to survive both of my granddaughters.
2.
Was Miss Lou the principal there when you were?
No,
Oh, she was.
no.
See, I'm way before. you.
Mr. Dearson.
Oh, Mr. Dearson.
Mr. Dearson was there. Yes, yes. Yes.
I didn't tell one big story about Tammy. She's been walking around for 2 weeks with a kidney stone and has not missed a day of work. She's a trooper.
Our next retiree is Cheryl Hooper from Garrard County High School. Mr. Anderson?
There's also, Ms. Hooper has 2 other principals in here if they want to say anything. But, Ms. Hooper is probably one of the hardest working teachers that I know. When I think about what the total package, not just on looks, but on teaching, it's
Thank you, Michael.
it's Ms. Hooper. She works 6 days a week. Like right now, if you went in her classroom, she's never at her desk. She's always circulating. She loves the kids and she wants them to do the best. She even, through the pandemic, FACS end of course assessments were 100%. So every kid that took her test for their certification passed it. So she's just a phenomenal, not only person, but I mean, teacher. She's everything. And then Mr. Stoll, Mr. Gresham, if y'all want to add anything, y'all are with her too.
I'll just say, Ms. Hooper always had a special place in my heart. She was everything that I wanted all of our teachers to exemplify. She provided such great quality student experiences for every student that came across. And I couldn't have been the principal I was, the leader I was, without phenomenal teachers and leaders like Cheryl Hooper in the school.
Thank you, Mr. Fresh.
So when you arrive in Garrett County in 1999 and you wait to see what you've actually inherited because you weren't from here, some of the first people you meet are the people who've had extended days. And so she was one of the first that I met, and it was a foretelling of what my experience at the high school was going to be. Now, I can't speak for the other principals, but I stayed for 13 and a half years because I was afraid to leave her. And so that's just the way it is with her. But what they've said is 100% accurate. There's nobody that you would have had more confidence in, nobody you would have had more trust in, nobody you would have rather put a student in than her room, because you knew that she was going to take care of them. And we'll miss her.
Thank you.
And I served with her on at least 2 screening committees.
Yes, you did. Uh-huh.
And I really didn't know her that well, but I remember some people that did know her that well told me, don't mess with her. And I, to be honest, I was kind of nervous. But we worked together pretty good.
We did, yes, we did.
Sounds like good advice, Dr.
Mr. Gresham, you want me to take this one so you can be in?
You want to be in it?
How about that?
I mean,
Well, everybody, I also served with her.
You did, you did.
I was there when you came, and
Yes.
you're the reason I left. The thing about Miss Hooper is that she treated every kid the same. Every kid the same, every kid was special. And the big thing about it is we never had intercom problems because when it went down, we had her.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay.
Thank you.
last but not least, Scotty Merida. We don't have a principal. So the sad thing about Scotty retiring is there's nobody who can stand here and tell a story like he could. So we wouldn't even try to do that. But if I know anything, and I probably don't, Scotty's been a part of Garrett County Schools for about ever. When I came, I had a chance to work with him. He became assistant principal here at the middle school when this was still the middle school, and then took a job that I told him this morning, of all the jobs in the district, his that he has right now is the one I wouldn't want, because he has such a level of responsibility that it's incredible. If you don't know what it's about being a transportation director, just sit down and talk with him sometime. He's up every morning making sure buses are ready to go, drivers are ready to go. When a driver's not, he does it for them. He's on the road with them every day. In the afternoon, same thing. And it's one of those deals that you hear people talk about 24/7 jobs. His is 24/7. Bus drivers calling at 3 a.m. to say they can't come in. Bus drivers trying to get back from some location at 11 o'clock at night, calling and saying our bus broke down. And you know what? Parents want to know where their kids are. And I think one of the things that you knew with Scotty as the director of transportation is that the kids were okay, that everybody was going to be all right, that he was going to resolve the issue, whatever that issue might be. Even as recently as Saturday, I had to pick the phone up while we were at the Kentucky School Board Association and call him. He happened to be driving a bus on the way to Paris with the baseball team, because he also coaches first base on the baseball team, and say, hey, we've got this issue. And he pulls over, he's making phone calls. 15 minutes later, we have an answer. When you have something like that, you take it for granted. And then when you lose something like that, you recognize what you just lost. So Mr. Merida leaving us will be a really, really big challenge. Thank you to his family, because at 3:30 in the morning, when it's snowy outside and everybody else is hunkering down, he's out. checking to see how things work. We told all of our staff the other day that next year on the first snow day, we expect the bus to be at CDR. We're all going to load up at 3:30 and drive around and see what it was like to be Scotty Merritt. And so I had a chance to ride with him this year, and he cares about the safety of the kids. And I think you just need to know how lucky we were and you were to have him.
Thank you.
Good. God bless you. Thank you.
So as Dr. Browning comes back around, I'm going to say what he's probably going to tell you in a second. You guys are welcome to stay, but if you want to go, now's the time. Thank you all for coming
Thank you
tonight.
all.
Thank you all.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Allen. We're gonna meet you. Thank you all for coming. I know you're gonna get one more seat for everybody to come.
Bless you all.
Sure,
Thank you.
appreciate you already.
Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Thank you all. All right, while they're exiting, item number 3 on tonight's agenda is the new superintendent standards. And for the last 2-3 months, at each one of our working sessions, Mr. Skull has shared with us each one of these 7 standards. And I want you to know that tomorrow night, the board's going to have a special meeting. Mr. Stull is going to be doing his capstone as he completes his first year of superintendent training. And then following the capstone, we'll go into executive session and each one of the board members has given their assessment of the job that he's been doing. And we're going to talk about that as board members. And then following that, we're going to meet with Mr. Stull and we're going to be sharing with him. So Mr. Stull, if you'd share standard number 7 with us.
So the last standard is influential leadership. As you read through it, you'll notice that it's a connection to the political, social, economic, legal, ethical, and cultural context. So it's a lot of stuff that maybe years ago we wouldn't have thought about, but it's an important piece for us now. And as you said, hopefully I'll be able to show you the evidences that will prove that we've been working on that throughout this year. I appreciate the opportunity to share and look forward to learning from you all tomorrow night.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate that. Item number 4 is to review the regular meeting agenda items. And Mr. Stull, where do you want to start?
If it's okay with you, the very first thing that I'd like to say is that I've printed for you tomorrow night's agenda so that you all have that. So even though we won't be doing anything with it tonight, you all have that there. If we start working through here, anything that I miss, please just point and we'll jump back in. Thursday, we'll do our regular recognitions, but we also have an extended number of recognitions of students. That's one of the reasons we wanted to make sure we gave tonight to our retirees. We didn't want to lose them in the mix, but we had a great opportunity to recognize several students from the high school on Thursday night, so we look forward to doing that. You all have had access to the SBDN minutes, and will continue to have access to those. As of today, we have no information on an audience comment. Board members obviously have the right to comment at any point, and we'll be sharing personnel changes since the March board meeting, since the April board meeting. And there's some significant ones, a larger number because of us utilizing, beginning to use the ESSER money to hire personnel. We have the treasurer's report, and I'll stop at that point and allow Ms. Coffey to share with you where we are currently. On your desk, you have 2 folders. One that will speak to this year's budget. It should say current, and you'll have another folder that will speak to the tentative budget that we'll get to in a few minutes.
I stay here, can you all hear me? Okay. For the month of April, we're ending at about a $7 million balance. And when we compare that to the prior April, we're up about $628,000. And I've got on the next couple sheets, I break down each fund, so you can look at it. But I'm gonna hit on the four that have the largest variances when compared to the prior year. So our general fund, the cash balance is $5,555,925. And that's an increase of over $763,000. And again, as I've explained the past couple months, that's due to the COVID relief funds that we received from the federal government. Our special revenue fund, that is our grant fund. That balance fluctuates each month just due to grant activity. So you see that we're in a deficit right now because we're waiting on reimbursement for April. School activity fund, the cash balance is $321,325. Those are the funds that are at the school level. The schools control those. We've never had to present those until this year, so that's why you see a variance on this. And then the food service fund balance is $694,582, and that's down by approximately $315,000 when you compare that to last year, and that coincides with our spend down plan. And a lot of that work was done at the middle school cafeteria. And then all the other funds listed, there's minimal change. So that's all I have. I'll answer any questions if you all have any.
Any board members have any questions?
Just my usual question. Our contingency fund is, we're still running about 11% or so. Maybe a little more.
We're looking at ending at close to 16%.
That's fiscal year 22.
Fiscal year 21, what we're gonna end,
What we're finished
I'm
with.
projecting about
Oh, okay.
16%.
Down a little bit from last year.
Up a little bit.
Up a little bit. Okay. Thank you.
Next item is the monthly bonding potential. And this month, there was a small decline in the interest rates. So there was an increase in the bonding potential if we were bonding today. Maximum capacity would be 29 million. So we continue to watch that, see how that fluctuates, as you all know that it does each month. We'll have bills for you on Thursday that you already confirm on a weekly basis. Consent agenda, we've included the previous board meetings from April the 12th, April the 15th. We'll again ask you to approve the treasurer's report at that time. We'll also ask you to approve the payroll dates for 21-22 school year. We have it in the consent because we use the same 1st and 15th of the month, with the exception of those days when it might fall on a weekend and then we pay early. So there's really no change. We're not asking you to pick a different set of dates. We will ask you inside the consent agenda to approve an interventionist job description. And it was just our mistake that when we asked you to approve the job descriptions earlier, that we inadvertently left this one out. It's not a new one. It's one that exists. We have a position at Lancaster Elementary and a halftime position at Paint Lick. We just want to be clear that we're not trying to hide anything. So we're bringing it back to you and asking you to approve that. It's attached, so you're certainly able to look at that anytime you'd like. We've received the contract for Friskies for the 21-22 school year. We'll ask you to approve that. It's about $444,000. We don't determine that. It's what we received from KDE. We'll ask you to approve a second year with KEDC as our co-op. We've had a very positive year with them. A couple of bright spots with them is because of their size, we're able to go to them and find out a lot of information real quickly, how it compares to other districts. So I can pull today what the KEDC schools will be doing relative to SB 128. And we can get that at a moment's notice. You also know that we're using KEDC this year to help us with our strategic plan, and it was part of our contracted services with them. So it wasn't something new. So we'll ask you to approve that again. We'll ask you to approve Lancaster Police Department request to use GMS parking lot. This is an opportunity for them to do a car show, and then those funds go to their experiences in helping kids at Christmas. So that's what that goes to. We'll be asking for your approval of that. And then, as you know, as a kind of a due after, we spoke with each of you about the Bass Fishing State Tournament, which occurred in between meetings, and we had no choice on that. You all gave us a thumbs up on that, but we will put it in to our minutes to make sure that it's there. We finished third in the state tournament. So we appreciate you allowing the students to do that on short notice.
Okay, thank you. And
Third is not bad out of all the schools that were.
Very good.
That's a really good job.
and those twins will be graduating
Yes,
this year.
and I think we had a set of twins a year before last or something that did very well. They graduated, and there'll be somebody to step up.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Those
And
twins have a college scholarship waiting on them at Campbellsville.
yeah, that's awesome.
Efficient, yeah.
Yeah, and, I'll be asking you Thursday night at the board meeting to, we'll just adopt the consent agenda unless you have any reason that you want to pull anything out for discussion, okay? So, and if you do, I appreciate you, letting me know that. All right, next, we've got a pretty full action agenda, Mr. Stowe.
A thing or two. The first item is approval of the Garrard County Learning Academy. We have in place now, and you have the ability to go in and take a look at our explanation for it, our application for it, and then what a contract would look like. It would be a K-12 program next year. It is not designed to be, hey, I want to get in. It's an application process that involves an interview process. We really would like to target providing this as an opportunity for homeschool students to come back to us through a hybrid model where they could do our online learning, but then also could come into our schools and participate in some of our extracurricular, co-curricular, and some of our learning experiences. So we want to target that as much as we possibly can.
I'm sure Mr. Bowman is going to make sure that everyone we're aware of that's homeschooling is made aware of this, and if you haven't already done so.
We are in the process to our needs. So we've got everybody that's got a list. We're going to be contacting them in about 3 different avenues, 3 different ways. And so as a matter of fact, it is something that if this gets approved on Thursday night, Friday morning, we can ramp it up even more.
So one of the things that we're going to do, and we're going to ask you to trust us for a second on this. We've designed something that I don't think exists in the state, an avenue to reach out to people in a way that they've never been reached out to before. And I know that sounds a little bizarre to hear me say it that way, but once we have it in place, we'll be happy to show it to you. And we think that it will do something that's never happened before. When you said Mr. Bowman is going to be reaching out, yes. And I think you'll be very surprised at the method that we've come up with to do this that won't look like anything you've ever seen. And when I say that, I'm serious, because I think you can ask anybody. And we're working with a company who's never done this at K-12, and they're a national company. So I think what you're about to see happen here, and boy, my fingers are crossed that it works. But when we do this, I think people are going to be shocked. And I'm hoping people are listening right now saying, what the heck is he talking about? Because I think when you see it, you'll say, oh my gosh, how did they do that? And it's not just the combination of what Mr. Boland's doing. It's a combination of what our schools are doing, because that's going to be highlighted through this process. So we're really excited about that. I think it's going to be a reach out that we've never done before. And as I said, our main target here is homeschool, because we feel like we have something that we can offer that we may not have been able to offer before, and still give them an opportunity to feel like they have some say in what's going on. So I would encourage you to read through the explanation that we have, to dig deeply into that. I'd encourage you to look at what the application process looks like and what the contract looks like. This is not a situation where somebody can just walk through the door and say, hey, I want to do this because I don't want to come to school. So it will be an opportunity, if we do it right, to do something that's not been done before. So I've built it up. It's on me if it doesn't work, okay?
Did you share that with all the board members?
I have not. And so Please be quiet.
I
I'm joking. He could tell you if he wants to. He's
No,
had a
that's
chance
fine.
to see it.
said, wow.
He's had a chance to see
That's
it.
all I'm gonna say. So if you can't trust him, trust me.
Coach
Yeah,
Hurts
Ken was
on it.
there. Coach Hurt was there.
I pleaded fifth.
Now, wait a
No.
minute. Oh, wait.
And one thing about it, you were, nothing would surprise me from Mr. Bowling. And I mean that in a good way.
I'll take that in a positive way.
Like I said, and I mean that in a good way.
Thank you.
No, that's why I asked the question, because I could see him nodding his head that he already knew what I was gonna say
We
and
are,
was in agreement, so.
we're well
That's-
under the way on thinking of that, and this summer would be hot and heavy.
Thank you for sharing that.
All I can say, when they roll this out, you're gonna be impressed, I guarantee.
It makes me look good for asking the question, because I got all these really outstanding answers, so.
Okay, thanks, sir.
Sure. Next item will be the approval of the decision for Senate Bill 128. While Senate Bill 128 is loaded with a lot of challenges, the recommendation that you'll hear from me on Thursday is that you approve this, and that we have an opportunity then to talk to the 43 people who've requested it. The 43 requests are spread out pretty evenly across all grade levels. Only one grade level didn't receive a request, that was third grade. That list is in here, you can go in and take a look at it. At the high school, it's 6 at 9, 6 at 10, 6 at 11, and 4 at 12. So you can see it was fairly spread out. We know at the elementary level, middle school level, you really didn't have to have this. If there was a reason to retain a child, we had a method in place that would have allowed that. But by doing this, I think you allow parents to have a say in what's happening. One of the things that we will do if you approve this, though, is set up a time with the parents to make sure they understand the unintended consequences. The bill was about 2 pages. There are about 40 pages of guidance that go with it. So it tells you that there's a lot of issues that could happen. And we want parents who make a decision to make a smart decision. Give you one extreme example, okay, just about this. You could have somebody who's in kindergarten right now decide to redo kindergarten, thinking that in the long run, this will help them when it comes to the world of academics and the world of athletics. They arrive at the middle school and somebody miscalculated an age, didn't realize how old that child was. And as they prepare to enter sixth grade, they turn 13 before August 1st. And when that happens, they're ineligible to participate in athletics. And because they'd be ineligible at that point, they'd be ineligible throughout their entire middle school career. They'd have an opportunity when they got to high school until their senior year. They wouldn't be able to do it their senior year because they'd age out at 19. Not saying anybody's doing that. We want to make sure parents understand that. So when they're making a decision, they don't make a decision without fully understanding. This is not a one-year decision. It's a decision that lasts for quite some time. Senior this year, who decides to come back, probably has fewer consequences, except they can't come back and do dual credit because they'll be a graduate. And they're no longer eligible to participate at the high school level. So if they're thinking they can come back and get a couple more classes in that way, we want to make sure that they understand they can do that, but they'll have to be dual enrolled, which would mean that they're enrolled with us and they're enrolled with that university, which could cost them the same cost as any student who's enrolled there. So I started with kindergarten, finished with 12th grade. Everybody in between, we want to make sure that they understand that. You may look at me and say, then why approve it? Okay. What about the one kid in there who does need this extra year because of something that they didn't get and they don't think that they can do that? Because you have to do this as an all or nothing. The simplest way to do it, in my opinion, and the reason I'll make the recommendation that I'll make, is that you approve it, and then we then have conversations with those families and help them with that. Surrounding counties are doing the same thing. KEDC, large number of those are doing that. I'm happy to share that information with you if you'd like to see that. Happy to take any questions you might have around SB 128.
And I might say too, since I became a chairman of the board in January, I made a commitment to go around at least once a month to all the schools, to talk to principals, converse with teachers, just to see how things are going. And this was pretty hot topic. It was for me because I point blank asked all the principals and all the teachers that I talked to if they were in favor of it, and I don't think I had one that was in favor of it. And since those initial conversations, I've been asked, well, how do you think the board's gonna vote on Senate Bill 128? And I'm gonna be transparent. I've told them I don't think it's gonna pass. But I didn't know this then, what Mr. Stoll has been explaining to you. And plus, I think every district around us is going to approve Senate Bill 120. Is that correct, or did I misspeak?
So the ones that I've talked to who've made a decision have said that they're going to.
They're going to. Okay.
Some of them have. A couple of districts are waiting to see what their board decides.
Okay.
To me, that doesn't really bear a lot of weight, what other districts, I think, and I may be wrong, but the way I look at it is how's it going to affect Garrett County? I'm not picking on Mr. Bowler, but that's going to have, because if something is not different or I'm comparing two different things, let me know. The money follows the kids wherever they go. If they choose to go to another district for that year, the money will go to the other district.
So there's a little bit of a combination here of 128 and 563. 563 is the one that opens the borders. Our concern on this is if we don't provide this as an option, that while 563 is not in place, if this is available someplace else, parents will find a way to get into that environment. And if they get there through a transfer, then yes, the money would go with them. So we're not exactly trying to keep it because of the money. If you think about it from the standpoint of 4 seniors coming back, if you all really think about it, that's really the only add of money that we're talking about. All these other students would have belonged to us. And KDE will fund those individuals who stay with us through a grading period. So you're only talking about 4 students, which is not a huge amount, but all of those other students below the senior level could decide that they wanted to go someplace else as well. And if that happens, we want you to be aware that there are going to be a number of districts around here who will make this available, and that could be an issue. We're not suggesting that you do it because, we're suggesting that you do it because this gives parents an option connected to Garrett County. We don't shut the door for them.
But I just want to make clear. But also, does that, I lost my train of thought on one thing, or I was trying to listen on the other. I've had, like Dr. Brown says, I've had several people call about it, and they were more concerned about the transfers out to other schools. And they felt like it would be maybe an out to a junior to transfer to another adjoining county who has already okayed it. And then it affecting our sports. Mr. Hurt knows more about the sports than I would ever dream of think about, but how it would affect our sports teams, how it would affect that, plus the fact that the NCAA, which I haven't been apprised of any change, there are some strict limits that the NCAA makes, and state legislature cannot override the NCAA, and they've already said that it could affect our student athletes going out of school into college, because there's a way they count it of how many years or semesters, or they've got a certain amount of time that they're eligible to play. And if this extra year could cause them to lose eligibility when they go on to college.
So that's
that was a concern that's been voiced to me by more than one.
So it's one of the reasons we want to have the conversation with parents. So we feel very certain that if we say to the parents, you can make this decision, and we help them understand what the consequences are, they may withdraw that request. But again, that became a parent choice rather than us not allowing them to make that decision. That's really where I'm basing my recommendation.
We can't recommend that they do something that might, through things that are unforeseen by us, like the NCAA and their rules. You know, that, I'm glad you are going to cover that when you talk to them, because it's very important. A lot of people go to school, and we have several students here that go on athletic scholarships. And if they're not gonna be eligible, they could dry up too. So there's some things a lot more to consider than I thought of. And, you know, you made a very good point about the one or two that need it. But still the 64 or 46 or whatever the number was, one or two compared to 40 plus, you gotta kind of balance that out in your head too. So that's where I'm thinking, and I'm like trying to be upfront like Mr. Browning. The people I've talked to have been, I guess it's the 65 bill. There's the one you're talking about that kind of run together, 128 and 563.
563 doesn't really affect us yet, but it's coming.
Yeah.
And it's the one that opens the borders. 128 though, if we don't provide this, I think you'll have some kids who will want to leave and go do something in another location. And there's always been the ability for students to leave us and go someplace else. And maybe that doesn't
They won't affect
establish
their
their
one-on-one policy that we've adopted, and we've tried to get it
We
down.
would still have to adhere to all of that.
Mr. Boland has worked hard to keep that at that level one-on-one. So if that's taken care of, that gives another answer. So thank you.
Sure.
I appreciate your.
Absolutely. Item number 3, we'll ask you to approve the tentative budget for the 21-22 school year. And Ms. Coffey is still here. That is in your folder that says next year. And she's going to walk you through a couple of pieces of that so that you can make the right choices.
All right, I'm gonna start with the tentative budget notes. Our general fund budget is approximately $23 million. And our estimated beginning balance is gonna be 3.6 million with a projected ending balance of 3.4. So that is gonna be a net difference of $200,000. So due to the need for virtual instruction during our current fiscal year, we were able to save money in various areas, and some of those were including our diesel fuel and our sub costs. And I think I've mentioned that before at other meetings. So since this is likely a one-time savings, we are hoping to utilize those funds on some of our building needs. So by setting aside some of our savings from the current year, that actually cuts into our contingency. But just know that that was something intentional that we did on this. Our budgeted revenue for our general fund, as always, I try to project conservative. Our seek is $4,000 for ADA, which is unchanged from the prior year. I increased property assessment just based on recent averages. Each year it goes up a certain percent. And then I also included our capital funds transfer, $225,000. So our budget expenditures, our salaries are increased due to our step increases each year. This did include the classified salary increase of 50 cents. It includes allocations to schools based on 140 per ADA. And then, as I mentioned above, it's the use of our contingency for our district needs. And then we'll look at our general fund a little bit more in a second. Our special revenue fund is our grants. That budget is approximately 2.5 million. Right now, we don't currently have our budgets, so we're using our almost rate of 90%. So by the time the working budget comes due in September, we'll have those numbers. And all grants are budgeted in accordance with state and federal guidelines. Our district activity fund is approximately $330,000, and that fund accounts for school funds that are maintained at the school level, or I'm sorry, at the district level. So revenue includes our board allocations and transfers from the school, and expenditures are still approved by each school. Our school activity fund is approximately, the budget is approximately 500,000, and those are funds that are maintained at the school level. So both the revenues and expenditures are handled at each school. And then they're sent to me each month for reporting purposes. Our capital outlay fund, the budget is 225,000, and we receive revenue from the state based on SEEK allocations. And as I stated a minute ago, we've budgeted that to be transferred to the general fund. Building fund is approximately $3 million. Revenues received from both state and local funds, and that's used to cover debt service expenditures. So for next year, there should be a remainder of approximately $500,000 that can be used on future building projects. Our construction fund, we did not have to include the tentative budget because we do not have any active projects that we know are gonna start next year. We've not decided on anything, so the budget was not required. Our debt service fund, the budget's 2.5 million, and then revenue comes in as transfers from the building fund and from the general fund, and it's used to pay for debt service. Our food service budget is approximately 2.3 million, and revenue is based mainly on federal reimbursements, and that fluctuates with the number of meals served. And payroll is projected at about 800,000, with the remainder to be spent on food and supplies and other needs of the schools. Our community education fund, the budget's approximately 11,000, and revenue is based on community education fees and is used to pay for the classes that are offered. And finally, we've got our trust fund, which is our scholarship fund, and that budget is approximately $78,000. The revenue is based on donations and interest earned. Expenditures are for student scholarships. So that's just kind of a summary of each fund. And then I have, I don't know if you all have this, the long sheet, this just looks at our general fund. And it shows our past 3 actual years, 18, 19, and 20. And you'll see how our ending balances kind of went up each year, down 40,000 from 19 to 20. Our projected 21, so what I'm projecting is the end this year is 3.6 million, and that's approximately 16% contingency. Now, we still have a couple months left in this, so this number is subject to change, but I'm hoping I'm getting close on that. And then our tentative budget, again, you'll see our revenues and our expenditures, and you'll see that we're down 200,000. But as I mentioned earlier, that's the contingency funds that we're setting aside this year to use for next year for building needs. So that's cutting into this year's money, which, as I said, was intentional. And then just some notes I have at the bottom. Our tentative budget includes SEEK again at $4,000, and also includes funding for full-day kindergarten. Our tentative budget includes full payroll. So if you remember this year, we had the COVID relief funds where we made almost 600,000 out of our general fund, and it came out of our grant fund. And it also includes a resumed cost back in our subs, because we're hoping we're gonna make it all year next year. And then our tentative budget sets aside funds for maintenance projects, and it also accounts for estimated cost increase in fuel and transportation, repairs and maintenance due to resumed in-person learning. And that was a lot of it. Do you all have questions? And then also you should have this looks like our monthly financial report that you get each time too. I made notes. It's just if you want to dig in a little bit deeper, each of those funds are in there.
Any questions?
Well, let's start, so you go over all that again.
I didn't take a breath.
Good job.
No, thank you very much, very thorough, appreciate that.
2,000 comedians out of work if you're making jokes.
Yeah, I know. All right.
The next item is approval of the salary schedules for the 21-22 school year. Ms. Coffey mentioned in there something that's in this one to make you aware of. Everything is pretty static here with the exception of the classified salary schedule. Asking you to do a 50-cent an hour raise for all of our classified staff who had not received something prior to that this year. If somebody had received something, you made a decision a couple of months ago for some individuals, they would not be partakers in that, but all of our others. So our bus monitors, our bus drivers, our cafeteria staff, instructional assistants, all the way through would be a 50-cent per hour raise. From the general fund, that would be about $88,000. The overall cost with general fund, our fund two, in all of those areas, it's about $150,000. And that's an area that if we weren't even doing the other $200,000 that you saw that we had set aside for maintenance work, we would have been even without any problem. So I think this is something that we can handle without any concern at this point. I do think that one of the things I'd shared with you a couple of months ago is I wasn't finished looking, and if I came back to you, it would be to talk about other individuals that we thought needed to be have something added to their pay. We realize it's not a huge amount of money, but we do think it's a concerted effort to make sure that we're providing something for that part of our staff. So if you have any questions about that, happy to answer that part or any of the other salary schedules, extra duty schedules that we have.
Okay.
So continuing the idea of funding, as you all know, we have funding for ESSER 3. It'll have a different title, but we'll probably always refer to it as ESSER 3 because it's the third group to come in, the largest amount to come in. Lots of districts are making decisions about whether they're going to use that funding to increase salaries. And one of the things that concerned me was if you go in and increase a salary and put it in the salary schedule, just like we were talking about with the classified staff a second ago, then it stays. It's not something that you can take out. So we did some legwork and found we found that we have the ability to do a one-time supplemental pay to all staff. And we can take that money out of our ESSER funds. I'm proposing and recommending a 2% supplemental pay to all staff for this current school year. They would receive that on May 28th. The money can be applied to their TRS to retirement. So even though it doesn't go into the salary schedule, they get the benefit of a one-time supplemental pay, and that amount applies to their retirement. So to make it as simple for me as possible, let me use this example. If somebody was making $50,000, 2% of that would be $1,000. Next year, their salary would still be $50,000 because we did not place that as a permanent raise. However, in reporting to TRS this year, it reports $51,000. So for them, it gives them a longer term benefit without putting the board in a spot where you have to make a commitment to maintain that amount forever. So it's a way to do something because I know you want to take care of your staff. And we've worked to figure out how this might work. And so we think that this works. We've worked with other districts that currently do this. And so it's a legitimate piece. If you will read through the supplemental pay component, it'll give you a very clear way of how we're doing it. So as an example, somebody came halfway through the year, we wouldn't give them the 2% on a full year salary, it'd be on a half year salary, the amount of time that they worked for us. If somebody was on leave where they weren't receiving pay, then that's how it would be calculated. So we've tried to look at the loopholes based on what other districts have done as well. There's one piece I would rather not talk about, but I'm going to talk about it so that it's transparent. My hope had been that we make this recommendation and do it for everybody in the district with one exception, and one exception being me. However, we learned in working with the other districts that if I don't accept this, no one else can count it toward retirement. So in the guidance, you will see that it says that I will take it and I will immediately turn around and write a check back to the district. This is not an opportunity for me to get a raise. That's not what we're trying to do here. But I do not want the rest of the staff not to have the ability to count it toward TRS. They could still take the money, but the difference between $50,000 at TRS and $51,000, there's an issue there. And we want to make sure that they have the rights for that. So I wanted to make sure that you all understood that there is clearly defined in this that I will return those monies that come to me. Now, let me be clear. It'll be the net that I receive, not the gross, because I don't want to lose any money either. I don't want to come up in a hole. But I also am going to share with you that I want to take that money and start, because we've started looking at a foundation. And if we can establish a foundation where we can do some other things, while this will be a small chunk of money, if we can place it there, that's what we'll do to start that ball rolling. So anytime somebody wanted to do something like that, they'd have the ability to do it. None of what I'm saying today is to ask anybody to pat me on the back. I would be happy not to do any of this, But again, we want to make sure that everybody understands why it's happening in the fashion that it is. So that'll be the recommendation that I have for you on Thursday, is that we do a 2% supplemental pay. And that's the language that we will use, supplemental pay. It's the supplemental pay that allows that to roll into their retirement. So if you have any questions about that, I'm happy to answer it.
And when I met with Mr. Stoll, I asked, well, it's gonna be a bonus then. He said, no, it's not a bonus, it's a supplemental pay.
Supplemental pay.
And I like the idea because our teachers and all our principals and administrators, man, the average person in our community has no idea what our teachers and our administrators have gone through during this pandemic. It's been unreal. I've seen it firsthand. And I've always appreciated it, but I appreciate them so much more. And I look at this as a way to reward them for their dedication through a very difficult time. And I'm gonna be transparent with all of you as well. When he told me what he just shared with you, what he was gonna do with his part, I told him he deserves it too, and I'd like to see him keep it. But he said he wasn't gonna do it, so. Anybody else?
I think that the mark of effort comes out greater during a time that we're experiencing right now. The time where everything's not good, but we've had people make it the very best they very possibly could, not only for the kids, but the parents and the community. And so because of the effort during the tough times, I think that it's undoubtedly just a small drop in the bucket to reward them for the great efforts that they've made on making this an outstanding place to live and to be educated.
It's not coming out of the general fund, it's not gonna take their contingency. And I think our people are very, very deserving of it. As board members, we are required to have so many hours of training every year to have to do the finance and, well, every aspect of all the stuff that we have to deal with as board members. And while we were in Louisville, I asked some of the financial experts about ESSER 3 monies and if that could be used for salaries, and all of them said, oh, yes, it can. Or not just salaries, but I mean for something like what we're proposing to do, so.
Not often does a board have the opportunity to have
No.
extra money that can be used to say thank you. And I'm very pleased that this is being recommended, that our certified staff they'll have a pat on the back for a very unusual year, and that we're able to use, that we are choosing to use these funds for this.
Anybody else? Thank you all, appreciate it, Mr. Stoll.
Next item is selection of the architects for interviews based on the responses to RFPs. We had 6 responses. I have posted there information regarding those firms. And it would be my recommendation to you on Thursday night to choose 5 to interview, and for us to set up that opportunity for you all to determine who would do the best job helping you make the decisions that'll be long-lasting decisions for the construction projects that lie ahead. So if you don't ask questions, I'll keep going.
That's the 10th of June.
So that's the recommendation is for the 5, and then the schedule has been talked about as the 10th of June, and I think it's been okay for everybody. So we'll start the process of scheduling that based on your all's wishes. Last month, we had to postpone this one. 2 months ago, you approved Patrick and Associates for our audit. We couldn't do the contract last month because we had not received it from KDE, but we do have it now. We'll ask you to approve that contract. One of the tough things that you all have to deal with as a board is knowing how challenging it is for people to pay for background checks. And we've been working on this for 2 or 3 months, and we're going to make a recommendation to you on Thursday. that we approve reimbursing our classified staff for the background checks, not our certified staff, but our classified staff, after they've worked for us for 6 months. We're not asking to pay for it up front. We want to make sure that they've become an employee of ours, that they've done what we expect of them. They currently are paying $96 coming for us. Our employees have a contract that might be $7 or $8. So there's 12% of that money that they're going to make just to have the permission to come and work for us. So we feel like that this is a fair thing to do. I know once upon a time, the district did do this when it was a smaller amount of money, and as it got larger, it became tougher to do. We did some research over the last 3 years. This would have probably cost the board about $5,000. So it's not an exorbitant amount. And some of the people that it would have cost that really wouldn't get the money back because they wouldn't have completed the 6 months. So that's why we've set that standard of you have to do it for a certain amount of time, and then it's a reimbursement, not a pay for.
Can we make it retroactive?
My advice is no, but you could. The reason my advice is that you not do that is because I think you have an ending limit, an ending list of people who will be standing there asking for that. But again, you all as a board have the right to do that. You probably want to calculate what those numbers look like so that you have an understanding of that.
That would be a one-time
It would be.
deal. Okay.
We'll ask you to approve purchase of 150 interactive panels using the ESSER 3 funding. Those 150 panels would be installed by the company so that we can pull Brad and his staff off of the summer work that they have to do. I think this will cover almost every classroom that we have in the district, with the exception of some very small classrooms. So as an example, at the high school where Mr. Anderson has some special ed classrooms that are smaller, we were afraid that the large ones would be too big, so we're going to have to look at a solution for that. Going to ask for approval of the cafeteria repair project at Paint Lick. They have had a drain line that has collapsed under the floor. They're surviving right now. It's going to take some significant work to do that. The estimate right now is about $14,000, but we're going to ask you to approve that. It can be done during the summer. Next, we're going to ask you to approve the purchase and implementation of an employee time clock. Apparently, this has been a conversation for a while, and it is a time clock for all employees, not just for classified. It would involve certified. The first pilot of this would involve my office and me. We'll not ask anybody to do anything that we are not willing to do ourselves. It will reduce a tremendous amount of legwork when it comes to paper copies of timesheets. There's a way for those to be approved within the structure without having to have those produced. Saving those become less space consuming. We know that it'll be a challenge. The implementation of it will not happen at the beginning of the school year. We would make the purchases, start the process with the software that we would pilot. First pilot, as I said, would be with central office. The second pilot would most likely be with food service because of the unique hours that they have. For anybody who questions our professional feel toward people on this, it's not really about that. It's not a question of professionalism. It's a question of ensuring a couple of things. One is that there's no fraud that happens to the district relative to people who are paid on an hourly basis, and that there is an easy tracking for our principals of people's arrival time at school. One of the things that I always have a concern about is if a student is arriving, getting off the bus and going to a classroom, we need an adult to be there. And there can always be a debate about whether an adult was there or not, because our principals do lots of things, like help kids get out of the car in the morning or if they're at a bus. So they can't see everybody who's coming in, and they shouldn't have to rely on a teacher next to that teacher saying, this is what's going on. So it's an avenue that we can use. It doesn't necessarily mean that anybody has to go to a machine and swipe a card. They can do it with this. They can do it with their computers when they arrive at school. So it's a matter of learning how to do that. It's not a matter of doing something where everybody has to go to one central location in the building. Because of that, we can reduce the number of swipes that we have to have. and we can connect it to the cards that they use for entry into the school or for use on copy machines, so it's not an ad or something like that. We've included the price estimates around this, and you'll be able to take a look at that. You can see them listed there. First time cost is a little bit, obviously, because you're doing something for the first time, but the reoccurring cost will be $8,700 each year.
Questions? All right, Mr. Stoll.
We'll ask you to approve 2 pay applications. Application 5 at Camp Dick. This one got lost in the shuffle somewhere. It went to some, because it came from a source that didn't normally send it to us, it went to junk mail. And so we missed it last month. So we've pulled it out, and then pay application number 6 completes the project. Pay application 6 is the one that takes care of the work that was done to make sure that we had a handicap accessible ramp at CDR.
Ms. Lawson, did they ever get the timer fixed on the lights?
It is, yes.
And how close are we to finishing out the projects that we started? Pardon me, lose my voice. Can you believe it?
So you're really finished with everything with one exception, and that was the add-on. We added on at the middle school to do the interior doors.
Yeah.
So that will start this summer, but the exterior door project is finished, the sound PA system is done, and now this will wrap up this one. You will be receiving some money back from that project. It's about $7,000.
That we will roll over to the add-on that we did on the other one to help defer a little bit of that cost, so we should be
That should be good.
doing very well, thank you very
Should
much.
be good. Earlier, I told you that I'd like to ask you to approve KEDC as a co-op. I'm going to ask you to approve a second co-op for us for next year. That's Central Kentucky Education Cooperative. We have a sense in looking at them that we can get some additional professional development by joining with them. There's nothing that prevents us from doing this. Next year, we might go back to one, with CKEC maybe being the one that we stick with. But there's some good opportunities for us. As a matter of fact, I sent something to Ms. Perry today relative to math, that if we're a part of the co-op by June, then that training is free. I mean, by July, that training is free to us. So the offer from them for PD is higher than what we have at KEDC. Both co-ops do some unique things that help us. And so we think that this would be a smart allocation of funding.
Okay, questions? All right.
A few years ago, the Kentucky Department of Education changed the requirement for job postings from 30 days to 15 days. And we've been adhering to that, but our documentation still says 30. So we're asking you to let us clean that up and make it say 15 days instead of 30. In the past, you may have been accustomed to us asking for a waiver down to 15 days. When we were close to the beginning of the school year, we no longer have to do that. It's always 15 days, and that's beneficial to us. Allows you to move a little more quickly and make some things happen when you're trying to fill spots. So we're just going to try to get our information aligned.
Okay.
I'm going to ask you to approve changes to the Chromebook plan. And if you'll remember, the Chromebook plan came in last year. So we're already asking you to make a change to it. So here are the changes. First, we're going to ask you to have an entry point at 3rd grade, which we've talked to you about, but we need to put it in the policy so it's there, or in the plan so it's there. And we're also going to ask you to let us give all graduating seniors, allow them to take their Chromebook with them. A couple reasons for doing that. One of them is by the time they've had it for 4 years, the Chromebook is closing in on being not as useful as it would have been before. Second, if we allow them to take it with them, then we don't have to figure out storage. And when we're getting to a spot now where next year we'll have over 3,000 Chromebooks in the district, one more thing to store is probably not what we want to get into.
And the amount of money we get for them, if we have somebody come in and reclaim them, is minor compared to the aggravation of storage.
And I think you're right with that. And I also think that this is a way for us to say thank you to the students who've been participating, because they've been paying a fee each year. So at the end, not only did they get to use a Chromebook, but they were able to take one with them. So
Chris will probably speak to that better than I could, as far as the aggravation of getting rid of them and loading them on pallets and getting the truck scheduled in to come pick them up and having to have them to their specifications of what you do and how you do it. I know you've been doing quite a bit of that shuffling around over the last couple of years.
They don't tend to go out in one piece though.
So it won't hurt your
Cobbled
feelings.
together till they're.
It wouldn't hurt your feelings at all to let them have it.
So you can go into this Chromebook plan, and I've highlighted the things that are changed, so it's easier for you to see if you need to. Next, earlier, I shared with you that we're going to be asking you to approve 150 interactive panels. They're replacing 150 smart boards. So for the same reason we were just talking about, I'm going to ask you to junk those smart boards so that we can move them out and not have to store them. If we were going to have difficulty storing Chromebooks, much more difficult to store those smart boards.
Can they be sold for junk or?
So if they're,
throwing them in
if
the
they're,
trash?
so if they're junked, we'll get a little bit of money back for them without having to go through a silent auction or a bid process like that. And if we're getting rid of them, they're not going to be as useful for somebody. That's the tough thing about technology, right?
Yeah.
When technology gets old, nobody wants the old technology. Everybody's looking for the new stuff.
You can't give it away, you just end up having to throw it away. If you can get somebody to come pick it up, you're better off, I think.
And the final item, we'll ask you to approve a change to the June board meeting schedule. As opposed to 2 meetings in June, we're going to propose that you have one. We're going to propose that you have that on Monday. Since it's a regular meeting, we'd say start it at 6, unless you say differently. But that'll be the recommendation that we'll make to you to make that change.
So one more meeting will be on a Monday.
Yes, sir. That's the recommendation.
So, and we still will be meeting with Mr. Stoll on that Friday.
You still can, absolutely.
And plus, anticipate it be a light agenda. Anticipate.
So we try to keep as many things in front of you as possible so you know exactly what's going on in the district. We'll make sure that you all are a part of that so everybody knows what's going on. But if we can keep it short, we will.
Okay, I understand. That's not a problem.
I will do everything I can to make sure that it's just, I can do to make it short.
Yeah. Don't even have to bring a sandwich.
So that's,
Well, we'll be, I might share those that may still be watching, I don't know, that we're going to be interviewing prospective architects. We're going to interview 5 on June the 10th, and hopefully by this June meeting, we can select an architect so we can begin the process of taking care of some much needed things. All right, any questions on that?
I've been through it before on the architect selection. It can go well and it can go wrong. It just depends. Hopefully it'll all go well.
I'm here too. All right. Board members, don't forget tomorrow night, 5 o'clock, capstone. And then after the capstone, we'll be going into executive session and we'll be going over how you rated Mr. Stoll's performance in his first year. We'll discuss it, and then we'll have Mr. Stoll come in and we'll talk about it with him. Then we'll go back into open session and we'll present the evaluation in a public meeting. Any other questions? All right, well, we've come to the end of the working session. If nobody has anything else, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. McQuarrie made the motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Dr. Lamb made the second. Any discussion? All in favor, raise your right hand. All board members were in favor. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
It's almost 5 o'clock.
Yes, ma'am.